and revealed how a poor farmer's unexpected brilliance transformed a railroad baron's life forever. Jacob wiped the sweat from his brow, a mixture of sun and despair clinging to his skin. The drought had ravaged his fields, leaving a barren landscape that echoed the emptiness gnawing at his spirit. For generations his family had called this land home, and now, with each passing day, he felt like history's last guardian, desperately holding on to their legacy. He was 32, but felt stagnant, shackled under the weight of family pride and mounting debt, like a stone pressing on his chest. As he examined the aging tractor with cracked paint and rusting metal, frustration surged through him. How could it come to this? He plucked at the greasy mechanics, dwelling fiercely on his plight. Just when his hands cried out to stop, he felt a flicker of realization. He began to tinker with ideas, an accidental epiphany taking shape. What if he created a technique to maximize what little water remained? The thought was intoxicating. What if he could unearth sustainable methods to resist the effects of the relentless drought? But doubt crept in, whispering that no one would care about the insights of a simple farmer in rural Kansas. Before he could muster the energy to dive deeper into this newfound concept, a whirlwind of uncertainty enveloped him. Only a few miles away, Theodore, the city's railroad mogul, confronted similar pressures. Accolades surrounded him, yet they felt nothing but hollow against fierce scrutiny for the environmental damage his empire caused. The media blasted him, shareholders demanded innovation. If Jacob's breakthrough could change a small farmer's fortune, could it also help a wealthy baron change his legacy? Jacob's heart raced as he recalled the upcoming auction where rumors hinted at Theodore's attendance. The thought of standing before such a powerful figure filled him with a potent mix of fear and defiance. What could a farmer possibly offer someone like that? As auction day came, Jacob felt like a tiny fragment of dust trapped between the gears of a massive machine. He squared his shoulders. Could he fight against that invisibility? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jacob stood before Theodore, blue-suited with a confident air, he felt out of place in his worn jeans and dusty boots. "I've been working on something," Jacob stammered out, his voice quaking as he spoke about his ideas. Theodore glanced down, skepticism masking his face like an unwanted veil. Was he mere fodder for someone else's plan? The whispers in the room swirled around him, a reminder that he was just a farmer from Kansas, the invisible laborer up against the titan of industry. His heart sank deeper as he sensed Theodore's disdain. Yet, as he continued to explain, some spark of curiosity flickered in Theodore's gaze. Jacob awoke something in that baron's heart, but at what cost? Theodore's reputation loomed over them like an ominous cloud. Jacob's stomach churned. Would he compromise his principles for a chance to keep his family's farm alive? As visuals of his cracked fields and withered crops played in his mind, Jacob knew the storm brewing within him reflected the clouds gathering ominously overhead. Faced with the decision that could seal or sever his fate, he felt the earth hold its breath, echoing his internal struggle. Steeled for what lay ahead, he prepared for the moment he knew would change everything, revealing not only his own destiny, but perhaps the value he could bring to a world that often overlooked the worth of hard work. Jacob stood before Theodore, counted moments weighing heavily upon him. In that instant, he felt more than vulnerable. He felt alive with purpose. "This method I've developed could shift our approach to irrigation entirely," he asserted, throwing caution to the wind, a hint of passion igniting his tone. Theodore raised an eyebrow, his usual confidence wavering at the edges. "And why would I listen to a farmer's pipe dream?" His voice dripped with condescension. Stung, Jacob thought quickly. Because, he pressed, defiance firing his resolve, this isn't just about drought, it's about sustainability. Your company is under pressure to reduce its environmental footprint. If you take on this project, imagine the impact, a railroad mogul leading a charge for ecological reform. The room's air thickened, charged with a tangible tension. Jacob could feel the whispers around them shift. Could his words reshape the narrative? He examined Theodore's expression, searching for any sign of inclination. This is not just a personal struggle, Jacob continued, his voice steadying. It's a chance to transform an entire industry. The murmurs reverberated back to him, a reminder of the voices that belittled his life's work. You have the resources. I have the understanding of the land, its needs, and the methods to adapt. In collaboration, we can build a legacy worthy of both our names. Jacob's heart raced. The stakes had never loomed higher. He had no safety net, yet for the first time he felt an inkling of self-worth that exceeded the dusty confines of his family farm. But as he spoke, he also felt a familiar flicker of fear creeping in, gnawing at his conviction. Was he merely a hopeful dreamer? Theodore's face softened momentarily before he masked it with a practiced frown.
"It's a gamble, and I need a sure thing," he stated, his voice low but cutting. Jacob clenched his fists, tempering the impulse to retreat into defeat. Isn't every great endeavor a gamble? But this gamble is rooted in practical science and experience. The intense moment gave way to a quiet realization. Jacob understood that he was no longer simply at the mercy of circumstances. This was more than a pitch. It was his moment of self-discovery. Old fears melded with burgeoning determination, each feeding off the other, each propelling him forward into unknown territory. "Let's explore this further," Theodore concluded, a glimmer of intrigue flashing in his eyes. "I want to see data on this proposal of yours. If it holds water, so might my interest." Jacob nodded, swallowing back the surge of relief intertwined with fear. "I'll have it ready." As they parted, Jacob felt a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration. He had managed the impossible. He had sparked the interest of a man he could hardly fathom standing in the same room with. But with opportunity came pressure. The road ahead was fraught with more than just practical challenges, but questions of integrity and self-worth. Each step he took could either solidify his corner as a passionate innovator or swallow him whole. Racing home, Jacob's mind wrestled with the fine line between hope and desperation. The need to prove himself, both to the world and to the very land that had shaped him, tugged mercilessly at his heart. Would he be able to create a sustainable future, or would he end up sacrificing the last remnants of his family legacy to an empire that might never understand? As night fell over the barren fields, Jacob resolved to map out his vision, but an undercurrent of doubt began to ferment. What if he couldn't back up his words with action? Just as he set his sights on a new future, he realized that he needed more than just ingenuity. He needed allies, evidence, and a plan that extended beyond mere aspiration. Correcting his path was essential before he could dare to present his scientific discoveries to the world, or risk losing himself in the process. And so, as a storm gathered in the skies around him, Jacob was faced with a choice: to forge ahead alone in a competitive industry, or to seek out partnerships that might help lift him above the plains of despair into clear, untouched horizons. The desperation of smaller farms weighed on his heart. The looming question now was whether the hands that cultivated the land could also redefine its future. What would happen when shadows of doubt clashed with the brightness of determination? Jacob arrived home with a mind swirling like the tumultuous clouds overhead. He needed a plan, and more than that, he needed clarity. As the wind rattled the old windows and the faint smell of rain coated the land, Jacob settled at his desk. Piles of papers, diagrams of irrigation systems, and clippings of agricultural studies piled high. They represented months of thought, countless experiments, and some heartaches. He was about to lean into a sketch of his dream irrigation system when doubt pushed through the door, announced by the snap of thunder. What if his methods were just elaborate scrawls on paper, great ideas that would evaporate under scrutiny? He momentarily crushed the worry, focusing instead on the tangible elements of his plan. He needed data to back his passion, a solid foundation upon which to build his case before Theodore. In that frenzy of thought, he reminded himself that knowledge was power. He recalled a figure in his past, Mr. Henderson, an old mentor from agricultural school, a man who believed fiercely in practical science and the harmony of nature's cycles. He had often said, "Understanding your land is as vital as understanding business." Jacob could still hear those words echoing in his ears, urging him to reach out, to ask for support. It wasn't just a professional journey, but also a personal one. The unfolding narrative of his life had taken a turn he hadn't anticipated. For years he had navigated the quiet, lonely corridors of legacy, trying to respect his family's heritage while dreaming of optimizing what they had built. Now he held the key to evolution. It struck him he needed to consult Mr. Henderson. With ink and determination bounding through him, Jacob pulled paper and began crafting an email that walked the line between anxiety and ambition. He explained the opportunity at hand, shared his research, and solicited advice. But beneath the surface, he also sought affirmation. He needed someone to affirm that his vision wasn't merely a whimsical fantasy. The next morning brought heavy clouds, but was also met with invigorating resolve. As rain began to fall, washing over the parched earth, Jacob ventured into the fields, taking the vast perspectives it offered. The open sky above matched the vastness of possibilities lying before him. He turned toward the barn, a structure that had witnessed his family's efforts, trials, and losses. Today, it felt like a refuge, where ideas could grow without constraint. He flipped through his notes and charts, mentally pinging their strengths and weaknesses, when suddenly he felt a surge of inspiration. What if he framed his entire proposal around a narrative, the struggles of a farmer combined with sustainability and technological innovations? Everyone loved a story, and he was living right in the middle of it. He spent hours designing a presentation, aligning his scientific findings with the urgent narrative of legacy and hope. As the storm subsided outside and the sun sparked ray by ray into the damp air, he envisioned standing before Theodore, presenting not just a method, but a movement destined for change. But as he clicked through slides, a bitter thread in him unraveled. Would such a grand vision be lost on someone hardened by revenue margins? Could he truly wield personal stories of struggle and triumph effectively against the cold calculations of corporate bottom lines? With every slide populated by data, determination intertwined with lingering doubt, and the two forces clashed like the storm had earlier. He needed to ground himself. Jacob stared at the screen, contemplating his abilities and those critical measures of self-worth that danced around his subconscious like seductive shadows. Declaring his path was just the beginning, he realized. His journey toward convincing Theodore hinged not solely on data compilations or fantastic illustrations, but on fortifying the inner scaffolding of his self-esteem. Was he genuinely worthy of this challenge? Just as he concluded that thought, a quick alert pinged on his phone. An email popped into view. Mr. Henderson had written back, quick and invigorating, echoing the promise of support. Curiosity swallowed Jacob whole as he opened it. The words promised insights, but hinted at something profound. Growth comes from partnerships, Jacob. You have the potential to rise beyond your limits. As he read those lines, a new wave of urgency surged through him, compelling him to prepare for the next meeting with Theodore, which loomed closer than he realized. He needed more than just a presentation. He needed a strategy that would speak directly to Theodore's ambition and vision. Was the approach of combining scientific rationale with the deeply human story of farming a gamble worth taking? The road was paved with questions, and clarity remained just out of reach. Jacob's fingers hovered over his keyboard. the weight of the next step heavy on his chest. Would he leap into this new world confident in his abilities, or would hesitation seize him as it had before, allowing the shadows to creep back? Jacob braced himself, ready as the clouds in the distance began to clear. The turning point approached, and urgency pulsed through him. Would his next steps lead to the breakthrough he believed possible, or would darkness shatter his resolve? Jacob leaned back in his chair, absorbing Mr. Henderson's words. The email felt like a lifeline thrown during a storm, but the weight of expectation was now heavier than ever. His thoughts tumbled like autumn leaves caught in a gust. The urgency to redefine his proposal suddenly morphed into an opportunity to confront his fears. What if he embraced vulnerability as a strength? The gaps in his knowledge no longer needed to be sources of shame, but avenues for collaboration. He could reach out to others, assemble a team that could synergize his ideas with their expertise. But even as clarity began to emerge from the fog, another layer of doubt lingered. Would others see his vision as worthy of their time? Would they believe in him as he was still learning to believe in himself? Determination coursed through him as he grabbed a notepad to jot down names of colleagues and mentors he could call upon. The engineer's words were enthusiastic, inviting him for a meeting, but buried beneath was a request for specifics, a hint of critical expectation. How well could Jacob articulate his vision under scrutiny? The click of the keyboard seemed to resonate with the thunderous heartbeat in his chest. Could he truly thread the needle, merging emotion with the necessary calculations? The stakes felt daunting. Understanding their angles was essential, but could he still push forward the narrative that had come to define his journey? The hour grew late, but Jacob felt an electrifying urgency shaping his thoughts. It wasn't just a presentation anymore. It was a declaration, a commitment to rise above personal insecurities and strive for a future where he stood firm in his beliefs. With unwavering intent, Jacob stared at his screen, acknowledging once more the layers of vulnerability he was ready to embrace. The impending meeting with Theodore loomed ahead, its enormity washing over him. Would he seize this moment to define his pathway, or would he falter under the weight of expectation? Determined to grasp every opportunity, he took a deep breath and hit save one last time, reading each line as if it were a promise to himself. Tomorrow meant not just a presentation, but a pivotal decision. What was he willing to risk for the chance at something remarkable? The moment for action approached swiftly, and Jacob felt the tumult inside him settle for an electrifying resolve. As he gathered his materials, a sudden thought struck him like lightning. Perhaps this wasn't just about Theodore's expectations, but about his own evolution as a leader. And in that realization, Jacob welcomed the rising tide of possibility. Would it finally be enough to carry him through the challenge ahead, or would the persistent shadows threaten to drown out his voice once more? Jacob awoke early, the weight of the coming day pressing down like the mist that clung stubbornly to the ground. He had barely slept, haunted by the thoughts of his presentation and the implications of his meeting with Marcus. Each tick of the clock felt like the loudest countdown echoing in the quiet of his room. Today would undoubtedly shape not only his professional future, but also his understanding of himself. He brewed coffee, letting the rich scent fill the air, attempting to ground himself in the familiar morning routine. Steps took him outside, where the land gradually brightened with dawn's first light. Each blade of grass shimmered as if it carried its own secret brilliance, reminding Jacob that growth occurred in stages, sometimes unseen until the moment was right. This place, this soil had never failed to provide for him, even when his confidence in the world around him faltered. Returning inside, he couldn't shake the nagging tension pooling in his chest. He needed clarity. Sitting at his desk with the sunlight streaming through the window felt like an invitation to harness the day's energy. With each click of his keyboard, he rehashed the presentation, infusing it with pieces of his life experiences. It was more than a mere business proposal. It had evolved into a narrative woven with vulnerability, intellect, and fire.
But as he reviewed the slides, his confidence wavered again, piercing through the fragile shell he thought he had built. Was it enough simply to be authentic? Did he have the technical prowess to hold his own against seasoned professionals like Marcus? The whispers of not good enough crept back in, seeking to steal the momentum he had crafted. Realizing he could not dwell on fear, he made a conscious decision. Today, he would satisfy the skills he knew he had and trust in the support of others who believed in his vision. This was not just his story. It belonged to those who had walked alongside him, sharing their wisdom. He set a reminder to reach out to Hannah while formulating his pitch. An electric rush surged through him at that thought. As he processed their possible collaboration, visions of green fields and efficient irrigation systems danced in his mind. He could see the impact of their combined efforts, how their diverse expertise could amplify not just productivity, but sustainability as well. Each decision, each partnership would plant the seeds of a future that benefited not only them, but the land itself. When the time came to prepare for his meeting with Marcus, he dressed more deliberately than usual. His choice of shirt felt symbolic, a testament to stepping into a role he was striving to own. In the mirror, he caught a glimpse of the man he wanted to be, poised yet authentic, driven yet approachable. However, as his vehicle rolled along the path to Marcus's office, self-doubt loomed large. Each mile felt like a mile marker on the road to self-acceptance. Would he really be able to engage in a meaningful dialogue about numbers and projections? Or would he crumble under the weight of not just expectations, but personal insecurities? After parking, he let out a shaky breath and recalled his core principle. Vulnerability was a strength, not a hindrance. Jacob closed his eyes briefly, centering himself against the impending storm of critical inquiry. He could share his aspirations openly while listening to Marcus's insights. It was about collaboration, and in that spirit he found an ounce of comfort. As he stepped into the building, the air crackled with opportunity. The blend of ambition and anxiety cloaked him, urging him to forge ahead, to embrace what would unfold. Inside the conference room, Marcus awaited him, radiating an air of expectation. But something else flickered beneath the surface, a realization that this was not just about numbers, models, or feasibility. This was the moment he could carve a path for his dreams and truly become the leader he had always intended to be. Let's see what happens then, Jacob thought, as he took a seat across the table. Could he articulate his vision in a way that captivated both their ambitions? With renewed intent, he opened his laptop, centered his thoughts, and began to hand them the narrative of a farmer ready to redefine not just his boundaries, but the landscape of agriculture itself. In the silence that followed, the real challenge loomed closer than he ever anticipated. Would Marcus's response confirm his path or lead it into uncharted territory? Jacob's heart raced as he prepared to share the first slide, the key to a future not just for himself, but perhaps for the very soul of farming as he knew it. As Jacob clicked through the presentation slides, the room remained a cocoon of anticipation. He noticed Marcus lean forward slightly, a subtle sign of engagement which lent him a flicker of hope. The words he had rehearsed in the quiet of his room now felt alive, swirling with energy as he spoke. Each point he highlighted was infused with the passion of his life's work, and he seized the moment to emphasize how their collaboration could yield a new paradigm in agriculture and sustainability. Yet as he navigated deeper into the discussion, self-doubt unexpectedly reared its head again. What if Marcus noticed how young he looked? What if he questioned the feasibility of Jacob's vision? Despite the clear plan he'd laid out, moments of insecurity began to pierce through his confident facade. "Look, Jacob, what's your long-term vision here?" Marcus's voice cut through the air like a knife, demanding clarity. Jacob felt the sharpness of the question echo through him, and for a brief moment he froze. Doubt crept in. Had he overstepped? Was he merely an amateur with dreams too lofty to grasp? Then he recalled the glimmer of the fields outside his window earlier that morning, the growth that often blossomed unseen and the patience that was needed for success. Turning his focus inward, he gathered his thoughts and drew from the well of experiences that had shaped him. "Jacob," he began, feeling a spark of conviction, "my vision isn't just about increasing yield, it's about cultivating a symbiosis between technology and tradition. I envision a landscape where farmers not only survive but thrive, where our practices enrich the land for future generations." The silence that followed felt weighty, yet Jacob noticed a shift in Marcus's expression, curiosity mixed with caution. Jacob pressed on, weaving personal anecdotes with relevant data, revealing not only the mission behind his proposal but also why it mattered on a human level. Each word felt like a renewed pillar in the foundation he was trying to build. Just as he concluded, a subtle but telling smirk flickered across Marcus's lips. It unsettled him. Was it skepticism or interest? Before anxiety could overshadow him, he reminded himself of the growth he had seen in his own life, the humble beginnings that had led him here. He refused to let that smirk deter him.
"Let's talk about potential pitfalls," Marcus said, his tone shifting to a firmer, more analytical cadence. "Every business has its challenges. What makes your approach foolproof?" The question hung in the air. Jacob had anticipated it, but felt a wave of vulnerability wash over him nonetheless. There was no foolproof plan. Life was messy by design. It was a constant negotiation with nature, finances, and sometimes even his own fears. He took a breath and, with deliberate resolve, offered a candid response. "I can't promise there won't be challenges, but I can assure you we will adapt, learn, and evolve. This project is a partnership based on transparency and shared values." He found a new rhythm in his words, each syllable surging with the gravity of his convictions. Marcus sat back, arms crossed, the smirk replaced by a contemplative frown. Jacob remained silent, waiting for a sign, a cue that his message had resonated. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus leaned in again, interest flickering in his eyes. "What do you need from me to bring this vision to life?" The question ignited a rush of adrenaline within Jacob. Here was the challenge he'd hoped for. This wasn't just a presentation anymore. It was an opportunity for collaboration, for growth shared. For the first time, Jacob felt the weight lift off his shoulders. "I need your experience and resources," Jacob articulated boldly. "This isn't just my dream. Together, we can reshape this sector. Let's build something lasting." The dialogue shifted dynamically, morphing into an exchange of ideas, visions, and insights. They began to discuss the logistics, the potential hurdles, and how they could address them together. In that moment, Jacob realized changes were underway, not only in the landscape he aimed to reshape, but also within himself. As they concluded, the meeting opened new horizons of possibility, sparking an undeniable excitement in Jacob. He sensed the power of potential partnership mixed with a strong emerging sense of self. With a firm handshake, they wrapped up their conversation. But as Jacob left the conference room, an unsettling thought nagged at him. There was more at stake than just numbers or projections. He could feel the responsibility weighing heavily on him, the dawning realization that he stood at a vital juncture, one that would define not only his career, but the very fabric of his identity. What he didn't realize was that this venture would entail not just challenging the agricultural norms, but also confronting the deepest corners of his own character. As he stepped outside, invigorated yet contemplative, he knew the true test was only beginning. As he walked towards his car, he couldn't shake the feeling. His past and future were colliding, crafting a narrative he had yet to understand fully. Jacob paused, glancing back at the building, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. What pivotal decisions lay ahead that would reveal who he truly was?
The excitement from the meeting hung in the air like a charged storm, but as Jacob slid into his car, that initial rush of enthusiasm quickly transformed into a heavy weight on his chest. He was filled with questions, swirling uncertainties that obscured the clarity he had felt just moments before. Was he truly ready for this leap? The idea of shaping an entire industry felt monumental, bordering on impossible. Tremors of fear gnawed at his confidence, but the adrenaline whispered a different narrative, one of possibility laced with urgency. He gripped the steering wheel, fingers digging into the leather as the engine roared to life. The pulsating rhythm of the tires against the asphalt mimicked the frenetic pace of his thoughts. He needed to prepare, to refine his pitch into a structure sturdy enough to withstand scrutiny from potential investors, partners, and even the farmers themselves. In the solitude of the drive, he began to strategize, crafting a mental blueprint of his next move. Jacob recalled a lesson from his childhood on the farm. Innovation was born from observing the unyielding cycle of seasons. He had watched his father adapt year after year, ingeniously responding to every challenge that the fickle weather presented. What if he adopted that same resilience? His father had always said, "The field reveals itself to those willing to listen." With each turn of the road, Jacob embraced this wisdom. He had to listen, not only to the market, but also to himself. It was time to confront his own narrative. When he arrived home, Jacob wasted no time. He fired up his laptop, determined to channel his nervous energy into productivity. He dived into research, seeking case studies of agricultural transformations, influential partnerships, and failed ventures. Each click drew him deeper into the complexities of what he aspired to create. He collected insights like a hoarder, weighing the successes against the missteps of others, trying to unearth the gems of wisdom hidden within both. As the evening wore on, sleep-deprived but invigorated, Jacob crafted a revised presentation. The slides morphed from bullet points into a story, a narrative not just of numbers and data, but of human resilience and relationships. He understood now that Marcus wasn't merely a gatekeeper to success. He was a potential ally in a journey that required both knowledge and heart. However, between the lines of graphs and statistics, Jacob decided to embed his own personal story. He shared anecdotes about his family's journey, how they had conquered droughts, pests, and fluctuating markets, always emerging more robust. His voice took on a fervent cadence as he meticulously intertwined facts with his lived experiences, driving home the kinship between technological innovation and deeply rooted traditions. But in the midst of this transformation, a lingering uncertainty settled. Who was this version of Jacob? Was he the passionate leader he had just portrayed, or was he still the hesitant boy unsure of his place? Each question peeled back layers of self-doubt, revealing vulnerabilities he had long tried to mask. The journey to self-awareness was proving as daunting as the professional challenge ahead. It was late when he finally stepped away from the screen, eyes strained but burning with a newfound sense of determination. He realized that this was not only about transforming an industry, it was about self-discovery. Each hurdle ahead seemed less like a barrier and more like a necessary probe into his capabilities and values. The next day, as he prepared for the follow-up meeting with Marcus, a flicker of excitement mingled with apprehension coursed through him. He studied his reflection in the mirror, rehearsing the revised narrative, while acknowledging the doubt creeping up from within. This was not just a matter of professional growth, it was an invitation to redefine his very identity. And in that moment of existential reflection, an unsettling truth emerged. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and while he sought to lead, he might first need to fully understand the person he was presenting to the world. As he turned towards the door, a chilling thrill shot down his spine. Clarity was on the horizon, but it beckoned with a warning. Facing Marcus would be one thing, confronting himself would be another altogether. What truths about his character would the next meeting unearth, and would he be ready for the revelations that awaited him? The sun barely peeked over the horizon, casting a soft glow that illuminated Jacob's cluttered desk, a landscape of scattered papers and half-empty coffee cups. The morning felt different. There was a quiet intensity in the air that mirrored his own inner turmoil. He felt as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for him to make the next move. With the clock ticking ominously, Jacob stood in front of the mirror once more. His previous rehearsals felt hollow, mere words lacking the weight they deserved. He recognized the need to transform his anxiety into authenticity, to walk into that meeting not just with a pitch, but with his true self. However, what did that self truly look like? The more he tried to define it, the more elusive it became, wrapped in layers of ambition and self-doubt. As he grabbed his keys, a sudden burst of clarity struck him. Innovation wasn't just about technology, it was about vision and courage, the audacity to redefine what was possible. He had to convey this. But how to frame his narrative so it resonated deeply with Marcus? The succinctness of his earlier presentation fell away, replaced with a profound desire for connection. During the drive to the meeting, the familiar backdrop of his town flashed by, each stoplight reminding him of the defeated farmers and the struggles whispered among neighbors. With the weight of their hopes pressing down on his shoulders, Jacob allowed himself to imagine their stories woven into his pitch. Each challenge they faced could become a testament to resilience, every drought a stepping stone. He could be their voice, but to do that, he had to be brave enough to show his vulnerabilities alongside their triumphs. Arriving at the upscale office building, Jacob steeled himself. He was not just entering a corporate arena filled with strangers, he was stepping into a crucial threshold, one that would test the very fabric of who he was. He mentally rehearsed the shifts he needed to make, a blend of statistics and storytelling, facts supported by emotion. He needed to make Marcus see the potential for a partnership rooted in shared values rather than just profit. As he entered the meeting room, the stark contrast of polished glass and steel felt overwhelming. Marcus stood by the window, a titan in his tailored suit, exuding an aura of assuredness that Jacob couldn't help but envy. Yet, instead of retreating into his insecurities, Jacob summoned a wave of determination. He could not allow himself to be intimidated by the gravity of this moment. He was here to present not just a business proposal, but a vision anchored in authenticity. The meeting commenced, and Jacob leaned into his narrative, blending statistics with personal anecdotes. He spoke about the farmers' plight, the pride of their work, and the dreams they dared to dream. As he navigated through his presentation, he noticed Marcus's eyes flicker with interest, occasionally jotting down notes. This was encouraging, but fear lingered beneath the surface. What if Marcus's interest was simply a facade? As Jacob concluded, silence enveloped the room, stretching out like a taut string ready to snap. His heart raced as he anticipated Marcus's response. But instead of critique, Marcus leaned forward, a spark of consideration ignited in his gaze. What you're proposing isn't just innovative. It could change the way we view agricultural investment altogether. Jacob's breath caught. In that moment, a collision of hope and anxiety surged within him. This was his chance, but what if it wasn't just about the partnership? What if recognizing the potential of his vision also meant confronting the depths of his own ambition and fears? The stakes were incalculably high. Both his dreams and the farmers' futures hung precariously in the balance. Could he truly be the voice that led to change? And in that moment of dawning realization, Jacob understood the next chapter of his journey was not merely about business. A deeper battle awaited him, one that demanded he confront the shadows of doubt lingering in the recesses of his mind. Would the coming revelations shatter his newly built confidence, or would they forge him into the leader he yearned to be?
As the echo of Marcus's words lingered in the air, Jacob felt a peculiar mix of exhilaration and trepidation. He had piqued Marcus's interest, but the stakes of his proposal now felt even more elevated. This wasn't simply a business transaction. It had morphed into something personal, an opportunity to transform lives, including his own. The truth was stark. If he faltered now, the repercussions would extend beyond his own ambitions. The meeting room was silent, every second stretching into an eternity. Jacob channeled the energy of the farmers who trusted him, drawing strength from their struggles. He had painted a vivid picture of resilience. Now he needed to reflect that resilience within himself. He could no longer be a passive participant in his narrative. The story he had to tell required courage and ownership. "Let's discuss your vision further," Marcus suggested, breaking the silence. It was an invitation, not just for collaboration, but for Jacob to delve deeper into his motivations. It only intensified the pressure settling on Jacob's shoulders. Now he had to bear witness to his own evolution or risk revealing the cracks in his exterior. As conversations flowed, Jacob recognized an intrinsic need to dig deeper into the heart of his proposal. There was a flicker in Marcus's eyes, a glimmer of hope intertwined with skepticism. Jacob knew he had to fortify that flicker with unwavering conviction. He began to weave in personal anecdotes, not just statistics. Each example underscored the potential impact of his idea, not just on paper, but in tangible, human terms. "Remember the farmer I mentioned, the one who'd struggled through the last drought? His resilience is what drove my idea. It's about giving them resources to innovate, to change their fate." He spoke, feeling the urgency wrapping around his voice, flowing up from a wellspring of fervor that had lain dormant too long. Marcus nodded, scribbling furiously. "And what do you envision as the next steps?" he prodded, clearly wanting more. This was where Jacob felt anxiety flicker like a candle. He could lay out steps, devise a structure on paper, yet the real question looming was whether he believed in them. Did he have the ingenuity and resolve to support his ambitious plans? "It starts with forming a coalition," he said, drawing on every piece of research he had done and all the people he had connected. Instinctively, he decided to embrace this as a shared journey rather than an isolated climb. "Let's involve those farmers in this process. Let them be at the forefront. We need their insights." The moment unfolded as an avalanche of personal discovery cascaded over him. Jacob realized he was not just seeking to pitch a corporate deal, he was striving to communicate his core beliefs. Collaboration fueled his passion, illuminating a pathway previously obscured by self-doubt.
"Tell me more about how you see this partnership developing," Marcus replied, a new interest glimmering in his tone. Jacob felt a thrill race through his body. He was not only risking vulnerability, he was defining it. His narrative began to shift from one of mere numbers to stories that echoed with significance. Yet amid the exhilaration, a gnawing thread of uncertainty remained. What if his disconnect from the corporate world was an insurmountable hurdle? He recalled moments throughout his life where he had shied away from asserting his voice, debates in high school, standing up for his ideals in a room full of skeptics. Even now, as he spoke passionately, he fought the impulse to shrink back, a knee-jerk reaction deeply rooted in habit. "I will need your commitment and investment, Marcus," he stated resolutely. This proclamation felt like a bold leap off the precipice. Would Marcus see the merit of investing in not just a business, but in the revolution of an industry? As silence enveloped them once more, Jacob waited, tension coiling in his gut. He was teetering on the edge of vulnerability and necessity, the moment poised to reshape not just his career, but his very identity. Would Marcus recognize the fire igniting within him, or would he dismiss it as mere idealism? The seconds ticked on, and Jacob understood that this meeting was no longer solely about the farmers, or even the proposal. It was about him confronting the depths of his belief in himself. How would he reconcile the doubts that still crept at the edges of his mind? The next breath might just reveal the answer, or plunge him into deeper uncertainty. And as Marcus's gaze locked onto his with intensity, Jacob braced himself for what would come next. The time had come to face the ultimate test, his own conviction. In the aftermath of his pivotal meeting with Marcus, Jacob found himself enveloped in a whirlwind of reflection and resolve. The conversation had revealed unexpected potential. Marcus, rather than being a symbol of corporate scrutiny, emerged as a potential partner eager to innovate. This realization ignited a surge of possibility within Jacob, urging him to transform from a hopeful dreamer into an intentional leader. As the sun broke through the clouds the next morning, Jacob awoke with newfound clarity, a sense of purpose coursing through him. The doubts that once loomed large began to lose their grip. What had felt like an insurmountable challenge from the outside now resonated deeply within. He saw the symbiotic relationship between his vision and the resources Marcus could provide. Jacob reached for his laptop, eager to shape his ideas into a detailed plan. He understood that words were not enough. He needed to articulate a strategy that would galvanize support. His mind raced through concepts of sustainable farming and technological integration, linking them to the plight of farmers who had struggled to make their voices heard.
As he crafted the proposal, he inserted personal anecdotes from his own life, how he had watched his father adapt to shifting conditions, how family heritage intertwined with an unwavering commitment to the land. Each story grounded his proposal in reality, forging a connection to those who would become allies in this mission. With a foundation of authenticity laid, Jacob discerned an important truth. His journey was not solely about success or profit. It was inherently about transformation, both for himself and for the agricultural community he aimed to serve. On a bright Saturday morning, Jacob hosted a gathering of local farmers at his family's barn. The weather cooperated, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves overhead as he set up tables adorned with coffee and pastries. He knew he had to present his vision, an unvarnished conversation about collaboration, sustainability, and the evolution of agriculture. As he stood before them, the familiar faces brought a comforting wave of bravery. The first few minutes buzzed with nervous energy, but he dove in boldly. "I know many of you have struggled just as my family has. We've faced challenges of drought, fluctuating prices, and persistent uncertainties. But together, we have a chance to redefine our future." Awareness shifted through the crowd. He spoke of partnering with leaders like Marcus, not as mere investors, but as allies in a larger mission. Jacob's narrative shifted from one anchored in fear to one rooted in empowerment. What had once felt like an uphill battle quickly transformed into a shared crusade. Questions emerged. How would the collaboration unfold? How would their voices be amplified? Jacob embraced these inquiries, recognizing that mutual understanding was essential. The farmers voiced their concerns and shared their dreams openly. He encouraged them all the while to envision not just their personal success, but the impact they could collectively have. That evening, they discussed innovative irrigation systems, crop rotations, and renewable practices. The collaboration sprouted organically, with attendees adding layers of insight that perfectly harmonized with his initial ideas. By the close of the meeting, Jacob sensed a palpable shift in energy. Hope, interwoven with anticipation, filled the space. In the days that followed, Jacob faced a flurry of emails from Marcus requesting follow-up discussions on specific logistics. What had started as a tentative pitch now unfolded into structured negotiations. Jacob possessed the necessary data and the farmers' voices, giving him a clear edge. As he sat down to strategize, another realization hit him. He was donning the mantle of leadership. He began assembling a detailed plan of the project, drafting points from their conversations, putting them into a cohesive framework designed to appeal to Marcus's key business sensibilities.
Then came a breakthrough moment. Marcus praised the inclusion of farmers' insights that anchored the proposal in genuine narrative. As they discussed financial projections, Jacob felt a solid confidence settling within. He had transitioned from a farmer with a fleeting dream into a respected partner with a strategic voice. Finally, after months of hard work and collaboration, the day arrived for a new partnership to be publicly announced. The press conference buzzed with journalists eager to hear about the innovative agricultural initiative. The audience mirrored the spectrum of their community, blending local farmers with stakeholders who understood the challenge at hand. Standing before the crowd, Jacob felt an incredible weight of responsibility, but it was met with an equally invigorating sense of achievement. As he addressed the audience, he saw beyond the floors of the conference space. He envisioned collective progress toward sustainability. "We are not merely collaborating for profit," he asserted with conviction, "but to cultivate a legacy where our fields aren't just beneficiaries of science, but thriving ecosystems that heed their own voices." The applause erupted, resonating with the essence of triumph. This was their victory, shaped by unity and persistence. In that moment, Jacob realized he had not only transformed his own life, but created a pathway for an entire community to flourish. The fear that had threatened to overshadow his dreams was finally eclipsed by the recognition of his purpose. The whispers of doubt faded, replaced by an undeniable truth. He belonged here, not just as a farmer, but as a leader. With his story firmly rooted in courage and mutual respect, Jacob felt ready for whatever came next. The foundation had been laid for a shifting tide, and he was prepared to navigate its depths, confident, capable, and committed to the journey ahead. Embodying change, Jacob knew his path was only just beginning, and he welcomed it. Now, inspired by Jacob's transformation, you need to subscribe now to the channel to stay updated on exclusive stories of personal evolution and breakthroughs. Leave a like now to show your support and help us keep these vital narratives alive. Comment your thoughts about Jacob's journey and what you believe his next steps should be. And don't wait even one more second to share this vital video with at least 5 friends who yearn for inspiration and personal growth.